Hello everybody and welcome back to the show. My name is Charlie and today we have a little bit of a story time for you. Before we get started, I just wanted to thank all of the supporters and all of the subscribers to the show. We just recently passed 6.2 thousand and just a couple months ago we were only at 5,000. So that is some incredible growth and you guys are awesome. So if you've been enjoying the show or you appreciate that I disable all ads on every single video, consider subscribing to the show. It really helps us out and it helps new players find the content. As a way of saying thank you to all you guys, I'm going to Pasic this week, which I'm really excited about. I've not been to Pasic since 2012, I think. For those of you unaware, Pasic stands for the Percussive Arts Society International Convention. It is the largest percussion convention in the world. It's really fun. You get to meet a whole lot of really great people, a lot of really famous musicians and composers. They have about every piece of percussion that is manufactured in the world where you can try and experiment with and ask questions to the people who make it. This is a really, really fun time, and I haven't been for a while because my life has been mainly centered around teaching band, and I've been going to the band conferences and things. So I'm really, really excited to get back to Pasic and just kind of catch up on what's been going on in the greater world of percussion. So anyway, I brought some free stuff for all the supporters of the show. So the first thing I have, for the first 100 people that come up and talk to me about the show, I have these awesome Marimbalogy lanyards, which are really great because the access pass that they give you has these like really awful like elastic things. And I actually had, last time I went to Pasic, mine fell off and then I had to pay for a new badge because I have no idea where it went. Now for the first 50 people to come up and talk to me, I have these super cool Marimbalogy wristbands. Now what's really neat about these is they have a surprise. They're actually USB wristbands. So I'm gonna be including a whole bunch of free PDFs of music and exercises and a couple videos, and that'll be really neat. Thanks again everyone for supporting the show. All right, on to our story time, the worst audition ever. Let me set the scene for you, if you will. So I grew up in a relatively low socioeconomic family. My parents had 4 kids very early. And when I was a kid, they were both working minimum wage jobs and there just wasn't a lot of money to go around. So needless to say, I did not have a private lessons teacher at all. Most of what I learned from the internet, and in the late 90s, early 2000s, there wasn't a whole lot on the internet. Nowadays, you have all kinds of stuff. There's tons of YouTube channels and lots of websites, and you got the Vic Firth, literature library. You have all this cool stuff now that when I was going through school that just didn't exist. All right, so let's talk about the preparation. So I played clarinet and oboe in middle school and in the first half of high school, and I decided I wanted to be a percussionist my junior year. And I was super obsessed with snare drum. I practiced snare drum probably for like 6 hours a day. And I got reasonably good at it. And I was really excited because I went to All-State Band that year and I got first chair at All-State Band. Now, as a side note, Virginia used to do separate auditions for snare drum and mallets. So you would either audition on snare drum or mallets, but not both. So seeing as how I never played mallets before, I was like, okay, I need to play mallets for this college audition. What should I play? So I went on Steve Weiss and I got the first book that I saw that looked pretty good. And what I found was this, Contemporary Etudes for 3 and 4 Mallets. Now the band program that I went to in high school was pretty awful. We didn't really have any sort of full-time percussion instruction like a lot of schools have now. And we didn't even really have a drumline instructor for most of the season. We had people during camps and that's kind of it. So I really had no knowledge of what to do with 4 mallets. And I really had no business playing a 4 mallet piece anyway. So I taught myself some super ghetto version of the traditional cross grip. And there's nothing wrong with the traditional cross grip. Actually, I quite like it as a grip because I think it's a really good hybrid of the Stevens grip and the Burton's grip. Like it has a lot of advantages of both of those. But I'm sure I wasn't doing it right. And I'm not even sure I was holding the 2 mallets correctly. So as you can see, this is definitely a recipe for disaster. But wait. It gets even better. So I roll into the audition room and I am wearing a tie-dyed t-shirt for my audition. Why on earth was I wearing a tie-dye t-shirt? Well, all my previous auditions had been blind because I was used to auditioning for like all district band. And I hadn't even thought about looking nice. It just didn't cross my 17-year-old brain. So yes, I wore a tie-dye t-shirt, strolled into the audition room, and there were way more people in there than I thought there were going to be. And they said, all right, what are you gonna be doing first? And I said, oh, well, I'll play marimba first. And they said, okay, great. What are you gonna be playing? And then it struck me, I had no idea how to pronounce the piece of music that I was playing. Like I still have it earmarked right here. Now, of course, I did not make photocopies for the people in the room, so I handed them my book and I'm like, I don't really know how it's pronounced. And they look at it and they're like, it's Berceuse. I was like, oh, okay. If I had known like one person that had some like French experience, they probably could have told me that. Or I could have done some research to find out how to pronounce the name, but it's just, once again, not something that crossed my mind as a 17-year-old. Oh, another thing is that the marimba that they had was completely different than the one that we had at my school. So my high school had this marimba with these like really thin bars, and they had, in the audition room, they had a Maltech Imperial, which the bars on that are like 2x4s. And that just completely threw any muscle memory I had completely out the window. So I get through the piece and it's okay. And then I do the sight reading. I think it was okay. I don't really remember. And then we get to the snare drum part. Now, even though I spent a lot of time on snare drum, I didn't actually own my own snare drum. Once again, limited financial resources. And I was used to playing on like the one good snare drum that we had at school, which was cranked pretty tight because we used it for a lot of rudimental things, even though it was a concert drum. And my band director did not let me use that drum for the audition. He wouldn't allow it to leave the school building. So I was like, well, I'll just play on whatever they have there. So I go to play the snare drum in the audition room, and it is tuned way lower than I'm used to. Like that drum head was floppy, and it just did not respond how I wanted it to. And I played the first De La Cluse etude, and there's a lot of really intricate stuff in there, and it was not responding good. My rolls weren't sounding as good as they normally do. Like, for all intents and purposes, it was a train wreck. And about halfway through the piece, they were like, okay, you can stop now. And me, like a dummy, I'm like, but I'm not done yet. Like, yes, like they probably know. They're like, yeah, we've heard enough. So at the end of the audition, we're wrapping things up, and I'm like, all right, guys, so how do you think I did? And one of the professors looks me right in the eye. He's like, we don't do that here. And that was the end of my audition. I said goodbye and walked out the door.
Spend all your time waiting for that second chance.
So needless to say, I did not get into that school, and almost all of the blunders I had could have been avoided if I had a private lessons teacher and, grew up in a higher socioeconomic household. That some of those things would have helped too. But if I just had a teacher to help me through that process, most of those mistakes would not have occurred. And that's why in my previous video, when I talked about things that you can do to get ready for your auditions, that is like the number one thing I can say is get a teacher who knows what they're doing, preferably somebody who has a degree in music so they can help guide you through this process. If you haven't seen that video, click over here or check the description. There's a two-part series on how to audition for music school and some pointers for you so you can learn from my terrible mistakes. So here's the thing. So I had this awful audition and I didn't get into my first choice school. But instead of just giving up or like getting really down on myself, I learned from my mistakes. Okay, so I showed up much more prepared for the next audition, and I came dressed appropriately. I came with photocopies. I cleaned up my music and my technique and everything. And the next two schools that I auditioned for, I made it into both of them. Now, had I just gotten down on myself and be like, oh, well, I guess I just can't be a music major, then I would have missed out on a really fulfilling career that I really enjoy today. Things worked out just fine. Like, I have a really good career in music now. I did drum corps in college. I play in my local orchestra. I started one of the world's first marimba YouTube channels. Like, things have worked out totally great. So just because you have a minor setback doesn't mean give up. It just means you need to learn from your mistakes and keep pushing towards your dream. I hope you have enjoyed our story time for today. If there's someone that you know that is thinking about a career in music, please share this video with them. Or if there's anybody you know that's had a bad audition and you think this could be encouraging to them or they could get a kick out of my awful, awful experience, please feel free to send this video along to them. All right, guys, thumbs if you liked it, subs if you loved it, and bells if you want some more of it. I'll see you next time.